Okay, awesome. So volume's good. So this is, if anybody doesn't know, this is Alex Austin, who did Gish and Pontifex, and there's a slew, like New Zero right now, Sub Rosa, Hockey question mark, Golf question mark. Let's see, actually this should be a thing. How many of your games can I name? I'm doing that right now. Ready? Gish, Pontifex, Bridge Builder, and then did you do a Bridge Builder too?
Did Pontifex too.
Pontifex too. All right, I'm gonna count that.
All
right. Hockey question mark, golf question mark, Sub Rosa, New Zero, Skater Don't, Volta, Touring Cars.
You were close.
Damn it.
Touring Car Legend.
Touring Car Legend.
At least you got the.
At least I didn't call it. What did I always call it?
Sport
Touring Racer or something. And I think that's all I got.
Yeah, that's the main ones.
There was also that letter game. I don't remember.
Yeah.
And that one where you ran around and killed all the people. That was kind of like a game jam game. But yeah, so this is Alex Austin. Cryptic Sea, that's right. All right, so you guys already know. So what are you in the mood to talk about? Or I could be a good host and then come up with shit to talk about.
I don't know. I had some things, but I can't think of them now.
You want to talk about physics in games? That's a subject that I am actually. So I don't put physics in any of my games. The reason that I don't, I believe, is because I think that you and David approach games from a standpoint that a lot of the interesting problems in games there are a lot of interesting technical problems in games. Like you're making New Zero where you're actually trying to make human physics work in a first-person shooter, which is like insane.
Yeah.
Right? And it's awesome. And I think that I did that kind of stuff when I was at DreamWorks or when I was working in AAA. And when I went to indie, I'm so petrified about getting a game out that all of the technical hurdles I avoid, and I try to make a game that's sheer either about gameplay or story or something that I can manage a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a thing. It seems like the people that have been indie for a long time, like when we started off, we had to do that
right,
stuff.
Yeah,
you had to make your own engine.
Right.
Because you look at like Introversion, like he's tried, Crystal A's tried all kinds of crazy, tech stuff.
Right.
And David, same way, he's been doing, even though he's still pretty young, he's been doing it for a long time.
Right.
And yeah, me, it's like when I first started off, there was no engines at all.
Right. I guess that makes sense, because I was thinking about whether or not I was going to do an engine or not. When Unity was really kind of like after A Virus Named Tom, it was kind of like, actually even with A Virus Named Tom with XNA, I was like, that was a library that I could just use.
Yeah.
It didn't have an editor or anything like that, but yeah, I was just like, I'm going to take that. You're right, like back in the day, it'd be like, here's STL, here's C++, like go at it, right?
Yeah. So I think, there's a few indies that seem to be doing some tech stuff, like Intrusion 2. I forget what his company's called, but Alexi, I think his name is. He's doing some cool stuff. I think he's using Flash or Unity. I think he used Flash and now he's using Unity.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, basically.
Right.
But he's doing some cool tech stuff within the engine,
Yeah.
But I do kind of miss that. Like, I wish people were a little bit more ambitious with tech.
Right.
But yeah, it's, when you're indie, it is hard. You can't, like I've been doing it for a long time, so I've built up skills and stuff that I can use. So it doesn't take me as long as somebody starting off.
Right. Yeah, I also feel like maybe there was something in me that, like, to divorce, it's almost like when I left, like, either AAA or film or whatever I was doing, it's almost like there's this line in my brain where, like, I don't even use any of those skill sets. I don't even do 3D. Like, I meant 2D. I went and I was doing, like, fire and simulation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I think I was self-conscious that, like, what I was doing on that level with all the help from like 400 other people, I couldn't even come close to achieving that. So I would feel like I had taken some step down. So I do a sideways step where everything is like completely different.
It does seem like, there's a lot of people going from AAA to indie now,
Right.
and they're not very ambitious with tech stuff either. I think,
No.
yeah, when you come from that world and like you have like 10 or 20 people working on one thing, you don't even consider doing it
Right.
with one person.
Yeah, it just scares you. Do you think that it with everybody using like generic engines and stuff like that the kind of variety of games suffers at all? Or
I think it has.
yeah.
Like, I think if you look at a lot of the indie games in the past 5 years, I don't think there's not a lot of variety with gameplay. There's a lot of variety with subjects,
Right.
but the gameplay itself hasn't really changed.
And do you think that might be part of like just using a common tool set? I know when we were at DreamWorks we were worried about we had our own proprietary renderer and we were worried that if we weren't doing that then we might like the look of our films might be swayed by the tools we were using to look more like other studios stuff. So do you think that that's like maybe it's kind of like if everybody's using a hammer everything looks like a nail sort of thing? Or do you think that the engines allow for such a diverse set of things it doesn't matter? I mean, there's probably a gray line somewhere where it's like if you were inventing your own tech, obviously you would think very much outside the box.
Yeah.
But using an engine might not necessarily make you think, might really constrain you or not.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely limitations if you're using an engine. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think a lot of the just, different stories or whatever for games, I feel like that's kind of a fad,
The
where it's
storytelling?
like, it's a game about this subject, but really it's just a platformer.
Right, yeah.
And I think that's why, I don't know, I think it's kind of changing where it's going back to like unique gameplay.
I have definitely noticed, like everybody's talking about, in the last year or two, there's a ton of like procedural games. There's a ton of like simulation games. There's a ton of stuff like that where it's something that you wouldn't think would be marketable in like a Walmart. Like, oh hey, you're this knight that kills this dragon. It's like you're trying to build a spaceship that'll fly in Kerbal Space Program, or you're simulating driving a truck around and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
It's
like spin tires. It's like driving a truck through the mud.
Right.
But it's fun,
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. Like I do feel like it's kind of swaying back to where like, and I feel like indie games were kind of like that 10 or 15 years ago more.
Right.
Well, yeah, 10 years ago, where it was more about like unique gameplay.
You know what I've noticed, and even in myself, is that like there'll be these mega successful indie games, right? And then they will kind of steer the market a little bit, like even with creative people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel that like maybe subconsciously, like a virus named Tom was like, I really enjoyed like Braid and World of Goo and stuff like that. So it was kind of like this kind of more polished, action puzzle kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then now look at me, like, I mean, I made a bunch of different prototypes, but the one that at least I got investment for and stuff like that, Duskers, I mean, it's a very different style of game, but I have to admit, when I look to my left and Lexi's making Spire, and I look to my right and Ian with Soulcaster 3 is, making it very roguelike. With just the procedural generation and the roguelike mechanics, I think, like, with FTL and a few games kind of blazing that, sort of re-blazing that path, all of a sudden, like, you see sort of like almost like mechanics or gameplay come in and out of, like, in chunks almost.
Yeah, it definitely influences people, and I think that was like 2008 or so, 2009. It was like the polished indie game was like what it was all about. So then like tons of people tried that. I think, were we talking about like the IGS talks, how they're all postmortems, and how like that's
Yeah.
a huge waste of time because they're talking about what worked 2 years ago.
Right,
And it's
yeah.
like, that's not going to work anymore.
Yeah, if it takes you on average 2 to 3 years to make a game as an indie, which every indie, some take more, some take less, but about that, and you're doing a post-mortem, that means that it was on development that you were doing like 2 or 3 years ago, and the
Yeah.
people that are listening are putting their game out in like 2 years.
Yeah.
So like if you just look at like Steam, 2 years ago versus now versus 2 years from now, like the marketplace just keeps changing. And same thing with everything. It's just like whatever, mobile, social, and consoles, everything just changes so fast.
That's why I still think you just have to make something that interests you, because there will always be a market for that. Like if you try to chase something, like try to clone something, or not even just clone, but just like try to
If you
capture some of that success.
If you try and think like
your heart
this
isn't-
worked, so I'll do this.
Yeah.
That's like self-defeating, right? Because
Mhm.
everybody else is already doing this, and people might be done with that. That's like,
Yeah.
so when I remember when I started making Duskers, I remember an indie was like, oh, I don't remember if it was like a roguelike or there was procedural or whatever, but they were like, oh, it was either in or out of vogue at that point that I was like working on it, and I was like, well, by the time I launch it, it'll probably like be not cool, and then not cool again,
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm just gonna make the game I want to make,
Yeah.
right? It's the same thing. I also feel like maybe because there are more indie games, and maybe because people are now starting to play a larger, like more people are playing more variety in games. I feel like, I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel like you might be able to get away with something that's more different now and reach more people.
I think so. I think, I don't know. I think it's kind of more necessary now because you have to stand out
Right.
somehow.
Yeah.
Whereas before, you still had to make something unique just because like nobody had heard of indie games. So like if it's like a AAA game but not as good, it's
Right.
like, who gives a shit?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Let me see. Gish was the first game I ever bought online. And they got all my friends into Gish football?
Yeah, did you ever play that?
No.
We actually had 4-player, like, it was just like 2 or 4 gishes and a football, like just a physics-based football, and like, it's pretty cool because there's a lot of different strategies you can use. Like you can pull it on top of yourself and then like press the jump button, which just expands and it like kicks the ball.
So are you trying to get it over a goal line or something like
Yeah,
that?
there's actually a goal line.
Is
and
this
a field
American
goal.
football or
Yeah.
like football? Okay, so this is like,
You
there's
get 3
literally
points
an
for a field
oblong
goal
ball.
and then 7, yeah.
I didn't even know this existed. Did
Yeah.
that come with the base game?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we added it in, like, I think we added the 4-player before we won the IGF, just
Right.
so we could show that at the booth.
Right.
And yeah, that was fun. There's still a couple bugs with that I want to fix because, like, you could, if you really smashed into each other, you could get stuck inside the other player. But yeah, it's actually pretty fun.
That's awesome that someone's on that played, because I played Gish later, like after its heyday, but I didn't stumble onto that in the
Yeah,
in
we
the
had
menu
it. Did
options.
you play the sumo mode?
Mm-mm.
It's just like a spinning platform. You just try to push the other person off. That one actually has a lot of strategy to it too.
That sounds super fun.
Yeah.
It's funny when I think back to Gish. Actually, almost all of your games have this through line of physics in them, right?
Yeah, most of them do.
Because I mean, you look at Gish, you look at Volta, you look at touring cars, you look at Skater Don't. Have you made a game that didn't have any physics in it?
Hext, the word game.
Oh, okay, the word game, right?
And we usually have quite a bit.
Is that something that is a passion of yours to work on because it's super fun, or is it something that you just love in gameplay? Like,
It's just to allow different types of gameplay. You know?
right, some kind of unpredictability and some kind of like feeling like you're really in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like to have deeper simulations
Mhm.
for stuff, and like since a lot of those games are about movement, I like to have a good simulation of movement.
Right.
But there's definitely other types of simulations that I want to do more. Like with the new Zero, I'm doing some economy type stuff
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that stuff's kind of lacking from games,
Is it? So
especially
this is,
AAA games.
this
like,
is a question, right? So I feel that I feel different indies that I talk to really pull inspiration from different sources, and sometimes that source is like they see games out there, and they're like, this, I don't want to play this,
yeah.
and like I want to make something that I would want to play. I feel like I get that from David sometimes. Is that the same thing with you? Where you're like, that inspires you?
I don't play as many games. Like, he plays almost every game that comes out.
And hates
every minute of it. Like, I would just watch him play when I was staying in his place for a bit, and it was kind of fun just making fun of
we're
games.
talking about David Rosen. But,
I did name drop.
right, yeah. Well, it's weird to be like David.
Yeah, no. But yeah, I hardly ever play games, and I do watch like YouTube videos
Uh-huh.
of games, and so I do get some inspiration from those, like Arma 2. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff
Right.
that communities have done with that, and so I would say it's probably not mostly negative. It's mostly like I see Arma 2 and I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if like this had
Right.
this too?
Okay, so more of a positive outlook.
Because I get bored with most of this,
Right.
like story based.
But you made BioShoot, right?
Yeah.
Was it just as
But
fun?
that was just that didn't have any physics. But yeah, that was just like, I saw getting all these great reviews, and it was just like, I was just watching a Let's Play. And the funny thing is, like, the Let's Play guy was like totally enjoying it. He was having tons of fun. But it was just like, the story and stuff is so ridiculous in that, like,
Right.
it was pretty easy to parody.
If the guy liked it, then I could understand it. Because I remember David one time showing me a video of like Skyrim or something like that. And this was a game that Holly and I liked. And, someone was, that you could put a bucket on their head and that would make it so they couldn't see you and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, if you troll the game, I get it, that it's going to kind of completely break it, right? But like, I felt like sometimes you can be biased by watching a Let's Play, because if it's someone that really hates the game. And that's why there's a lot of power in Let's Players, right? Yeah. Because it's like, you can watch someone play a game, and if they're having fun, it could look like an awesome game. Same game, if they're hating it, right? Yeah. Could look like a horrible game. So it's like, it's
I don't know,
interesting.
I don't know that a single one can influence that much.
Right.
I don't know, maybe like the big ones, but like, if the game's good, there'll be somebody that's enjoying it. Right. And people can find that video.
Actually, this makes me think of something that you brought up earlier, which is like when we were talking about Steam curators. That's topical. But like you were saying that you didn't think that was going to influence the marketplace too much.
Yeah, and I was right.
Yeah. I think we agreed over lunch. But no, I think Lexi was talking with you about this, and it was one of these things where a lot of people feel that with the Steam curators list, that's serving things up in your carousel, or that's someone whose opinion you trust, and so you would care about those things. And then your counterpoint to that is a lot like when you read a review of a game. That's not the right medium to experience a review of a game is text. Same thing with like so-and-so says it's good. And that's why you think the Let's Play is so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, you could watch somebody hating a game but say like, well, that looks fun to me,
right.
This person's an idiot, or they don't get it.
Right.
And I think that's one of the good things about Let's Plays is like, I think the Let's Players like have that in their back of their mind that like, if they don't give a game a chance,
right.
like people are just going to be like, you're an idiot, like you didn't see this obvious thing.
Right.
So like, I think they're probably a little more hesitant to just like give up on a game, whereas like a written review, if like they don't get it right away, they'll just be like, okay.
I have to admit that like on reading reviews, it is nice because there's like a brevity to that format. But then at the same point in time, like I did read some reviews of A Virus Named Tom where I'm like, this person didn't play past the 4th level. Yeah. And then I read other reviews where I'm like, well, this person just doesn't like this kind of game. And if someone was reading that review, they might write the game off. But if they were watching a Let's Play and someone doesn't like the dexterity elements, and the other person's like, "What? That looks cool,
Yeah.
right?" Then at least your work is being kind of shown.
Yeah, and they won't
Yeah.
just play the first 4 levels.
Right.
Because then it's shown
Right.
like on video that they didn't play the game.
Yeah, and there was stuff like that. There were Let's Plays that were negative too, but at least I felt like,
Yeah, and maybe somebody will watch that and say like, it looks fun to me, you know,
Right.
like, and that's the thing, like, yeah, like, and that's why I don't think like Total Biscuit or somebody like that just recommending a game on his curation page. I
He's
don't
gonna
think that
sway the
matters.
needle
Like,
a lot.
I don't know what type of games he likes. I've seen a couple of his videos, but it's like I don't care if like our tastes match up. You know, it's just
Right.
like I'm just watching it.
you're watching it to
To
see the
see him
game,
playing the game.
and get some entertainment out of it too.
Yeah.
You've got like a little bit of
Somebody went crazy with
something.
the-
Oh, I have to change. I forgot to change the title again. Okay. I'll take some time doing that. Interview. Alex Austin. Austin. There we go. Now everybody knows. You didn't do Cannon Brawl. Done.
Playing interview game.
Does that even work? Do I have to do this?
Interview.
Can I just say
Interview
Gish?
the game.
Playing Gish. There we go.
That is in there.
Done. Oh, Twitch. Just forget it. We're gonna leave the bad title up because I can't
Let's talk
handle.
about Cannon Brawl.
Let's talk about Cannon Brawl. Gish and Avian 2 were both games with excellent multiplayer mode that no one played.
Yeah.
This is true. This is another thing. So this is another thing that actually I remember Alex and I talking about when you were doing. I think you were in the middle of Skate or Don't, and I was doing A Virus Named Tom, and we were both kind of bemoaning that a lot of people not only didn't have controllers, but there wasn't a good way to turn your PC into a console. And we talked about making the indie console,
Yeah.
which was just a launcher that you could put any game in and you would control it with a
Yeah.
gamepad.
That you could just run and start
Steam
up.
Big Picture is not bad because it is an interface that you can go through and use the
Yeah.
controllers. And I do feel that like as time goes on, more and more people. Now I don't think it's crazy. Like when I launched A Virus Named Tom, I wasn't crazy for having someone to think someone would have a controller. But to have 2 controllers and play with somebody local, that's
Yeah.
still kind of crazy talk.
One thing I want to put back in is for Skater Don't Not is like multiple players on one keyboard, because then
Right,
people can
yeah.
try it like with 2 players, and it's not as good of a control
Right.
scheme like.
At least they
Then
can
maybe
see.
they'll buy a controller or something.
Right.
and or just connect to Xbox One.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully more people just hook a PC up to their TV.
Yes.
Um,
They used to have those wireless dongles for your Xbox controllers. But now I don't think they make them anymore.
yeah, I don't know.
Because when I hook it up to my TV, it's a little hard to have the wired ones, and
Yeah.
because I had an Xbox or like have an Xbox, I just had controllers for it, so it was really nice.
I want to get like a really long USB hub,
Hmm.
or
Oh, so
a
you run
wireless
one
would be
wire.
nice. But yeah, just that, and then you put that
Then
on a
you
coffee
plug
table.
them all
and
in,
then you
yeah.
Because that would work.
Yeah, I do find that I've been playing more and more now that we got that Steam box
Yeah.
from Intel. Thank you. Like I do have that on, and I've noticed that at first I would still prefer consoles if I was in the living room at least, and now I am finding that I'm playing more and more like PC games in the living room
Yeah.
because I have a
Do
wireless.
you use the big picture deal?
No, so I haven't been using Big Picture
just use the
despite that.
mouse,
I just
yeah.
use the mouse because I have like a wireless keyboard.
Yeah.
But it's cool because now up in the corner it's like minimize, maximize, and then there's a controller button.
Yeah.
And you
yeah.
click that and it just goes into Big Picture,
Yeah.
which is really
But you
slick.
don't use it.
No, but I still use the controller for games.
Yeah.
Like if I'm playing like we were playing the Telltale games I was saying, which are basically choose your own adventure type games.
Yeah.
But it's just more comfortable than to sit with a keyboard
They
in my
need to
lap.
put in the
have
big picture thing. They need to have like a Netflix launcher, or
Right.
like if they had all those like Hulu and Netflix in there,
Yeah.
then I think people would.
I think so
totally do
too.
that. And that's why people have Xboxes hooked up.
Right.
You know, they don't
That's what
really- they don't
yeah.
really play
My
games
Xbox,
on-
I can go from my game to Netflix or Skype or whatever.
Yeah, that would be nice. Like if Netflix had a gamepad interface on the PC.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. We got like a huge. This thing is long. Someone wrote something. Wait, let me unclick this. It's been 10 years since Gish came out. As someone who's been in indie games since the beginning, what's the biggest changes? Caspian Prince at Puppy Games recently wrote an intentionally volatile blog post about how much more worthless the average customer of an indie game is today. Rarely paying more than a few dollars for a game and being super aggressive and privileged doesn't work perfectly, as well as the indie game scene being a monopoly owned by Valve. Any thoughts on this from both of you? Do you feel that being true on a virus named Tom, for example? Do you feel any of that being true on a virus named Tom, for example? Sorry for the ranty question. So, things that changed, or any thoughts on that?
It's definitely changed. I mean, on average, yeah, the indie game consumer pays less, but that's because there was like 1,000 of them
Right.
like 10 years ago, and now there's millions. But people were fucking entitled back then. Like Gish probably was like pirated. I mean,
Right.
like crazy. Like probably 10 times as much as people actually bought it. Like
Right.
people are. We released the sales stats like I don't know, like 5 years ago, and like people were amazed how little we made off that.
Right.
You know, it
for
wasn't-
how big of a game it was,
Yeah,
right?
it's like everybody knew about
Everybody
it, but
knew about
everybody
it.
pirated
Not
it.
everybody paid for it.
And that's you know, like there wasn't Steam back then, so like, you know, there
Yeah, you
wasn't
put
the
the
sales. You couldn't
executable
just
up,
say
right.
like, yeah. So it was actually easier just to pirate it than
Right.
it was to like go to
To
our
go-
webpage and put in your credit card and all that.
Right.
Whereas now it's like easier to buy the game.
Yeah, which is really cool.
So I don't know that. I don't think that's true. Like,
How about the gamer as far as the entitlement stuff? Like, do you feel like you get the same amount of like angst and entitlement from someone who paid X amount from your game as you did before, or do you feel that that's changed?
well, I get angst and entitlement for free games, which is really annoying. But I think that's just the way people are. I don't know if that's more so now. I mean,
Right.
you probably hear about more people now because you know there's like 50 different ways for people to
Right.
annoy you.
And this is a strange thing that I didn't grow up with. Like, I'm realizing right now, like, granted, you know, I didn't make The Legend of Zelda, but, you know, when I was
Wasn't you?
growing, that wasn't me, no, different guy. But when I was growing up, that was like a big deal. Like, it's like I knew Nintendo. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't even know the designer's name. You know, I
Yeah.
didn't know the developers. I didn't know, like, there was just this red symbol that was Nintendo, and they
Yeah.
made the games, right? And so it's crazy for me that not only would some kid growing up today possibly know or care about the developer because there's fewer of them, it might be one person, but then be able to contact said person. Right?
Yeah.
Like the idea that I could tweet to the person that made a game that I loved, you know, that would be crazy for me. And
Yeah.
so like it seems really interesting, this sort of different world. But then at the same point in time, sometimes that relationship can seem also very casual, right? It can
Mhm.
seem like they're just like, you know, they can say that something's a piece of shit or whatever to you on, you know,
Yeah.
and just call you out individually. It's kind of weird. I think it's like
Yeah.
a really good thing and a really bad thing all in one.
Yeah. That's basically what the internet is.
The internet is a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I know you have a crazy, awesome, horrible group of fans as well, right? Like you
Yeah.
sit there and you get people that are so excited about Sub Rosa and that jump on those new builds, and that's really exciting because people care. But then that can be incredibly obnoxious, and you can
Yeah.
get some really annoying people. Do you think that? I don't know. Like it's one of those things where it's like there's pluses and minuses. Do you think one outweighs the other, or is it just totally different?
I don't know. I don't. It's not too bad for me. You know, like I'll get some annoying things every once in a while. But I probably just need to be less sensitive.
I think, and that's the funny thing is that I find that
But it's
everybody
weird.
says that, and if everybody is saying that, then
Yeah.
is that the
well,
solution?
also, I think Twitter needs to just do some things to prevent
right,
like people from just creating accounts and annoying people.
right. I think a
There's
lot of these
definitely some
mediums need to
things-
grow up a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, And it's like YouTube comments. Like I think I'm just gonna totally disable those on all my videos because like I never see anything productive come out of there. I don't even check them anymore.
Right. You know what? It's interesting because I have a very, I have a small community, and I think that helps because I don't like I haven't been around as long, and I don't have like this, you know, every time I put out a video, it's not like everybody jumps on that, and so I find that the larger you get, the more it's just a noise ratio, right? Because it really bothers you when someone posts a bad thing. So I don't get as many of those. But then I also find it's content too. Like I just posted a video where I asked that when I was talking about persistence in duskers. I did that as a YouTube video, and I posted that, and I was genuinely asking people for advice, right? And I got back like some interesting feedback, and nothing was "this sucks" and that kind of thing. Probably because like 150 people watched it, right? But also like it's just like it was so nerdy. It was posited in such a way that I think a troll wouldn't bother, and the people that actually care and bother to respond.
It's definitely like if you can sway it one way or the other, and like since I don't check the YouTube comments, they just devolve.
Right.
But like something like that where they know you're going to be looking at it, and
Yeah.
like, if they say something really dumb, you can just delete it.
Yeah. Same thing with forums, right? Like I found like with the Steam forums, like at the beginning because it was so small, and I would come in, and even when someone would say something negative, I would jump in and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way," or whatever, and then they'd be like, "Whoa, there's a human being here," and I forget that they're thinking like, "Oh, I'm playing Assassin's Creed. There's a million people in here, and the developer isn't going to ever read this."
Yeah.
Or I mean, not to say that AAA developers don't read things, but it becomes more, who is this person? And when it becomes more personal like that, I think that they act better. But then, you go in a Humble Bundle, and all of a sudden a lot of people start coming in. And then it gets to the point where there's too many per one developer for you to start trying that methodology anymore. It's like there's like this critical mass where it just becomes too much.
Yeah, I just don't want to deal with that stuff.
Yeah, it's super distracting.
Yeah, I mean, like people will give suggestions or ideas, and it's like I was in Sub Rosa, and like this guy was just driving around with him, and he's like listing off his ideas, and it's like, yeah, I already thought of that. Like,
I spent like all day
buses,
working.
Right. I've thought about that. It's not. That's what I told him. It's like ideas are the easy part.
Right.
Actually putting them in.
Putting them all together is the kind of the pain. Yeah, so Let's Players have a bad habit of missing very obvious things because they can't shut up. I actually, the other week, was playing Cannon Brawl with Pete, and I found it harder to think because I was playing and I was talking and I was trying to make sure that everything on the stream was going okay. And that's just like enough of my process to like kind of throw me off, so I can understand that. How'd you get the name Cryptic Sea, and why not double A, if you know what I mean?
I don't know what he means.
I don't know what he means either.
Probably my name. I don't know.
Oh, double A, like, because Alex Austin, maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I call him AA Gun. If you guys want to do that, that would be really cool, because he likes that.
I don't know. It was just a dumb name.
I actually think that's a cool name. It is. I understand.
It's kind of one of those annoying ones because I have to explain that it's not the letter C. It's S.
Oh. See, is it
I tend to do that with all my games, like Pontifex. Like I've seen Pontiflex.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that you only think of after, like Misfits Attic. Like, it doesn't roll off the tongue, and then a lot of people think addict. And I should have, and this is like kind of, I think this is like branding 101, where like you just say it to a couple people and see if they understand what you said and have any confusion, or tell them to go to a website or whatever, and like it totally fails all those things. But I was literally looking for a .com that hadn't been taken. So.
Yeah, I hate thinking of names.
You come up with such great names. Drinking Test.
Yeah, you're usually pretty literal.
I find that I can get a much better feel for whether or not I enjoy a game just by watching it get played rather than reading a review. Yep. What's your favorite board game?
Monopoly.
I think my favorite board game, it might have been Axis and Allies. It takes forever to play, but I really love that game. But actually, no, okay. I'm going to go with a very lame answer and say chess, because I've played that the most, and I adore that game. Other than that the starting position's always the same, and so people have their openings and stuff. Outside of that, chess. How about you?
I don't know, like, I've kind of had favorites. Like, I played a lot of Puerto Rico, but
I haven't played that. I really want to
I
play
got
it.
to the point where I played it so much, like, it was just like...
Right.
Because there's no...
Is that a
I don't
builder
think
placement game?
There's hardly any randomness in that. Yeah, it's like a worker...
Worker placement.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's see. I've been playing some other ones. Ticket to Ride is pretty fun. Like, that's a simple one.
Are you planning on moving forward to put the new version of Hockey Question Mark onto Steam like Sabrosa?
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think. So I think that I'm just trying to make sure my battery doesn't die.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's got 26 minutes. But I'm trying to think. Anything else that's either topical or not that you can think of that's kind of interesting right now? I'm trying because we always talk about all this stuff over lunch, and then I'm trying to think of any of those things that like that myriad of topics that we always go over.
Well, one thing, like, I don't know, that I kind of struggle with is just like inspiration sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
For new games or for the games you're
the
working
games
on?
I'm working on.
I think that's really. I think I get there too because you have this big. Oh my God! Wouldn't it be cool if I made this game? And then you start making that game, and then you start making that game, right? And then there's a whole lot more work to get to the finish line. And I think a lot of new indies, they're like, oh, I've got this $1 million idea, which is just a funny thing to say because, like you're saying, ideas aren't worth anything until you actually start doing them. But then after you've been working on a game for so long, you can start to burn out. And I find that happens because I'm too close and I need to step away, right? And I think that's a big part of why you develop so many games concurrently, because it's an easy way to step to another thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like the walking physics and stuff like that. Like, if I had just tried to do that, and just worked on that every day, I would have quit. But yeah, just working on other games like Sub Rosa and the EP and stuff in between.
I found my only real, because I was always too worried when I was making a virus named Tom. I was like, I got to finish this thing because we were burning through our savings.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the hard part about jumping around in other games is trying to figure out how you can maintain an income when you've got a bunch of unfinished games.
Yeah.
But I think when I was making the 3 prototypes, I was having a lot of fun because even when I was like making Duskers, and then remember during the Omega Jam or whatever, I was supposed to be working on Duskers, but I started working on The Last Shadow because I was burnt out on Duskers because I was doing it like 24/7, and then all of a sudden I was just like, let me just have a game where everyone's jumping off the walls and stuff like that, and that was a lot of fun. And then I feel like when I went back to Duskers, I was way more productive at that point.
Yeah, I think that can be good.
But then I guess the flip side of that is when you have so many games, then do you feel like a pressure with each one? Like, oh, I haven't visited this one in like a couple weeks or whatever?
I kind of get into that sometimes, just kind of lock up because I have too many things.
Right.
Like, yeah, I mean, like with Sub Rosa, I have like 5 different things I'm working on for that.
Right.
And then New Zero, I have 5 different things for that.
Right.
So yeah, that can be kind of hard and overwhelming. That's kind of the negative part about working on
multiple projects.
6 games at
The
once.
other problem, I guess, is that people get excited about them, and then they're always like, why aren't you working on this one?
Yeah.
It's like
that was...
the Sub Rosa fan like sees you working on hockey, is like, why are you working on hockey?
Yeah.
Then the hockey fan sees you working on Sub Rosa, it's like, why are you working on Sub Rosa?
That was when I did look at YouTube comments, it was every time I'd post a video, if it was a New Zero, it's like, where's hockey?
Right.
Where's Sub Rosa?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, I mean, people don't understand, I guess, but like, those games aren't going to get done any faster if I just sit there
right and just work
at
on
the screen
those
all day.
Yeah.
And a lot of things are intertwined with them where like I can, like the car physics in Sub Rosa came from New Zero and Touring Cars, both of those games, like, and back and forth.
That's
they all
really
benefit
cool
each other.
that you can share that knowledge across them. I guess that was sort of true with my 3 prototypes because I had never used Unity and I was figuring it
Yeah,
out.
so
So it's like it made every
So even though you're not working on one of them, you're still
Yeah.
developing skills that you can use for the other ones.
yeah.
And even if it's not related, you're still just developing game design or
Yeah.
programming skills.
Yeah, I would say that's true. No matter what, your craft in areas, it's like you're working out muscles you don't really know until all of a sudden like it influences it and you can see that. But yeah, because I can't, it's the same thing. Like, I'm like, if I was really good at branding, even with this stream, I would be like, all right, every week it's Duskers, because I'm trying to get people to eventually, hear about that game. But I can't do that. I can't, like, I get burnt out and I'm like, that seems boring. So I'm like, let me, like, grab you and, like, just talk about game design or do something else. And, like, I think that's the problem is that, like, a lot of people think of it that way because they only go and they interface with you, like, once a week or whatever. So they're like, you're the Duskers component of my week, so where's that? You know what I mean? And then with us, it's like, our whole lives are revolving around these things, so you need some variety in there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Just silly things like how's this theme made for Sub Rosa coming along? More screenshots.
I don't know. I think it's. I don't know. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Yes, we did play. I think we played Overgrowth multiplayer. We definitely played it.
with the fighting arena.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's actually at that point we were talking about kind of like what you did with the EP. We were saying, could we get together a bunch of our multiplayer games and package them, kind of like Sports Friends or something like that, and say, hey, here's if you got like for the people that have 2 controllers or whatever, like here's like Skater Don't, like The Last Shadow, Overgrowth Arena Edition kind of thing,
Yeah. Sports acquaintances.
Sports acquaintances. Yeah.
I still like to do that. I mean.
I would too. And like Lexi made like his like
forklift
game
his
or whatever.
Forklift game is, that's a game that nobody's seen. That's actually really fun.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like.
He should totally finish that. Why is he taking so long?
God damn it!
Let's post on his Twitter.
We should. Everybody here, go bother Lexi Dostal about why his forklift game isn't done. Are you salt? Salty? I don't know. I didn't even know you could put emoticons inside of the chat for Twitch. But
Kickstarters? Nope.
No, both of us haven't done Kickstarters. I think you've self-funded all your games, haven't you? Maybe.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I'm at the point where I'm not self-funding at this point, but yeah.
Yeah. I self-funded a virus named Tom with our savings, and then Duskers, somehow we got a bunch of money from Indie Fund and a bunch of indies to chip in and allow us to do that. However, the only downside of that, I mean, it's amazing. The only downside, of course, is you got to pay that back, and then they're going to take a percentage after that. So it goes from I hope this game makes money to I hope this main game makes enough money to pay those guys back, and then more money. So I joke around that I'm almost putting Duskers in this spot where it's like it's got to be like most games. I do feel it's like it's really hard to get a home run, but if you're not getting a home run, you're barely getting anything. So I've just kind of extruded that a little bit.
You have to like at least get a triple now.
Right? Yeah, you can't.
There's no getting a base hit.
Getting a base hit and being like, all right, next game.
Not as good as it.
No.
Yeah, it is weird. Like that is one thing I don't like about indie games now is that you can't have like that moderately successful thing anymore.
Yeah. That's almost a dream of mine. Is just to make a game that's good enough that like a niche group of people liked it, and it did well enough that I can make a living and I can just make another game. It doesn't have to be like I have to run this crazy marketing engine and I have to make sure that it's the #1 hit and stuff like that. It would feel more genuine.
Yeah.
It would feel like really good if it was just like some people liked it, everyone didn't love it, but that's okay. And then I would feel less pressure to have to market it or to borrow against it or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like hyper. It's just like most forms of entertainment. It's just hyper hit driven and super competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, it's kind of a bummer. But yeah. Yeah, more whatever. With the bar getting lower and lower for people being able to make games, are you worried about your game getting enough spotlight time? Also, what's your take on Steam's new curation, negative, positive?
None of my games got any spotlight time, so I'm
Right.
worried about that.
I think I'm kind of.
There were some indies, like we talked about that like hit Steam at the right time,
Right,
where it was like you just had to get in that capsule thing. And,
right. I think, for me.
But those days are over, no matter what.
I think that there's a double-edged sword too, because one is that it was always hard. It was never easy. Like, even people would talk about Greenlight. They're like, oh man, like, you got in before Greenlight. I'm like, before Greenlight? Did that seem like that was easy? Because that was like, send an email to Valve, wait like a month, and then you get an email back that says yes or no.
And you had to be super persistent.
Right. So it's like, it's not like that was, I mean, I think with every step, it feels like if you put more work in, there's more possibilities. But it's exhausting because then you have to put more work in, right? It's a lot like it's.
I still feel like it's the same as it's always been. You got to make a unique game. You have to stand out somehow.
Right. And you have to work your ass off.
I mean, there might have been like a few years there where you could make just make a generic polished game and like just market it a bunch.
Right.
And it might have worked.
Make some money off of it.
But it's definitely not like that, and it wasn't like that before.
Yeah.
Like
I think everything. I really do feel that. Everything feels a little bit easier than it was like 10 years ago. Things might feel a little harder than it was like 3 years ago. Yeah. Or do you think that it's just always been just the same level of
just finishing the games already?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and like I've never really tried to do the marketing side of it.
Right.
Usually my games have been able to just get by on word of mouth, and so it's still kind of what I rely on.
See you and David do that, and I'm like, I so want to do that, and like that feels the best, right? You're just making your game, and you're telling people about it, especially with the pre-orders that Overgrowth has done, right? And it's just like people that want to buy it, and they support the continued development and stuff like that, and that seems like the best scenario to me, because pushing everything toward this launch day, and then hoping that it makes or breaks you, is just so defeating, because it's just like after you launch, even if the game does well, there's this like depression that kind of comes in, because it's like you've been so tense and everything's led up to this one moment, and you let out all your breath, and then all of a sudden no matter what, it can't live up to the amount of work, because it's just a day, and now all of a sudden it's just like, okay, now what, right? And so then it just leads to this kind of so it's like I think it's so much better when you can just continually work on your games. It'd almost be better to, what's that, Patreon or whatever? It'd almost be better to be like, hey, I'm a game maker that, you like, help support me, and I'm just going to make awesome games.
That is interesting. Like, I don't know if anybody's tried that. There's definitely been some press people that have done that.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, like...
I don't know about game makers. Because that would be pretty, because I can understand, like, as a game consumer, you might be like, hey, I want this kind of game, and I might not necessarily want the next game that this person makes.
Yeah,
but
it would be hard, and
I could also
you would have to do a set schedule, and
right, because otherwise,
then it's like, I don't like this month's game, or
right,
so
yeah,
I quit. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really know if that would work, but okay.
I still I kind of like actually selling games, like having to sell games, because it kind of forces you to get to a certain point,
right,
of that you would, if you were just making games and you didn't have any kind of responsibility to the players.
Right.
Like, I would probably just make shit that I like, and
right.
Fuck it, I'm done.
Yeah, and it's just good to have milestones in general, right? And not only that, but then say that a game is done, right? So that you can be like,
that's the other thing too, is like,
I don't think I could do, like, I know a lot of these free-to-play, like, it's like games as a service kind of thing. I remember...
Oh, I would hate that.
I remember Holly talking to me. We were thinking about doing, like, way back in the day, I was thinking about doing this mob game, this mafia game, and it was one of those. And it wasn't, like, a free-to-play kind of thing, but it was like a continual thing where we keep adding to it. And she was like, do you want to be working on this like a year or two after it launches? And I was like,
Yeah.
you're right. Like, I don't, the reason I like point of sale, I mean, maybe like with an update or whatever that you're doing shortly after, but not like forever and like it just expected to be that way. That's
It's
exhausting.
like your battery's dying.
Oh, yeah. My battery's dying and we're out of time anyway. So thank you for coming on, dude. And that was Alex Austin.
Thanks for not being able to find anybody else to do this.
Yeah. And then next week, I usually, see, this is why I'm not professional. I used to have up here all this stuff that said, like, you know, Wednesdays at 2 or whatever. So anyway, same bat time, same bat channel next time. Sorry for people at the end if we didn't get to your questions. But we're out of battery and we're out of time. So
If you have questions, tweet them to Tim.
yeah, tweet them to Tim. And then I will retweet them to Alex
Don't do
Austin
that.
at CrypticC.
No, that's not right. I don't have Twitter.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys. Bye.